Alright guys, Hutchcraft again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The Toronto Major is over, the champion has been crowned, and what an unbelievable weekend we just had of Call of Duty here. The venue, the fans, the storylines, nothing could have been better than this weekend. The way it continued, the way it concluded, the fact that FaZe looked absolutely indomitable coming into this event and do not go the whole way. So many storylines to dive into today. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. This, by the way, was the trophy, of course, coming into today. The nut returns, of course, from last year when it was a squirrel holding the nut. This year they've got it in a different setup, of course, CN Tower inspired, and I thought this was absolutely fire right. Toronto do a great job with absolutely everything when it comes down to running these events. And just what a sensational day and weekend of Call of Duty it has been. In Challengers, by the way, look at this as well. They had a whole belt for the Challengers winners. I think all the players, the coaches got their stuff, and it was FaZe Black that got the victory. So Dylan, Rex, Asim, Exceed, and Brack, they're back on top. Exceed was talking about, the king is back. Asim, of course, overpowers Purge's team early on in the winners' finals, goes on to beat Major Maniac's team in the grand final. So Asim back on top. Whether there's a seedial opportunity for any of these guys, that remains to be seen. But yeah, there are certainly teams down there that went out earlier this weekend that may well very need to consider roster changes. But let's see how we started, right? So Optic Texas played New York Subliners, and I thought this was going to be a competitive series, and that is exactly what it was. But Optic continued their incredible streak of winning every single game one they played this weekend, which was absolutely emphatic. Now, they win the game one, they go to a high-rise search, and I'm not going to lie, going into the FaZe series, I was sitting there thinking, high-rise search and destroy, are we serious right now, guys? It ain't the best map for Optic so far this season, but clearly they've been putting in some work. Didn't really see that against the Subliners though. They lost relatively emphatically here, a pretty comfortable 6v victory to tie up the series. Then we went to a control that was won by the Subliners. Map 4 though was absolutely dominant on Rio Hardpoint. This was completely emphatic. Hydra was trying his best. I think Kismet this map went 10 in 29. He had a really rough one, and it's got to be said, right, that for the Optic side, their players just really delivered today. We saw a tricky day yesterday for Optic, right? They just about got over the line to even make it to the Championship Sunday in the first place, but when they got to the Championship Sunday, every single player turned up in their moments here. Dashy was certainly one of them. This was an incredible moment actually, right? Because yesterday against the Toronto Ultra, when CleanX had that 1 versus 2 clutch that Pred didn't get on the bomb, another Pred and Dashy 2 versus 1 here. Skies gets the kill, but Dashy gets the bomb at 7.5. Like, this was half a tenth, maybe less. I don't even know at this point. But this was insanity. I didn't think Pred had it. Then, or Dashy had it. I looked at the scoreboard and I thought, well, actually, maybe he does. And it was right on the nose. I don't know if Optic really thought that they had it, but yeah, they were mind blown. They get the victory this time, and Optic get it done in 8 rounds. Kismet, again, interesting play there, but he goes down. This guy, Hydra Man, is just so good. Shotzzy doesn't even know what he was saying here, but what a day that he had as well here, right? Like, we talk about the whole Shotzzy superstar thing a while ago. Wow. The plays this guy made today, certainly, I thought, against FaZe in that losers finals, we'll get into in a second. But Optic get the victory. They take down the Subliners. A 3-2 victory, incredibly hard fought after getting dominated on that invasion control. Hydra, 100 kills, 1.2, not to beat. Kiz with a 0.67, right? And look, the Subliners, top 4, it's the minimum acceptable if you're a top 4 team. But is it even acceptable? You can raise the question there for the Subliners whether they've got to think about something. Not like they're going to make a change now, but it is just worth noting that Sib had a great showing this event. But certainly not the case really for Kismet. 0.67, he had a 0.57 against FaZe the day before. Speaking of FaZe though, Toronto versus FaZe, and this was a sensational series to watch live. I'm not going to lie, after game 1, another pretty dominant, okay, it was a 50-point lead, but in the end it felt like FaZe were always going to win. Victory on the Vista hardpoint here. Draza popped a 4-piece to end it. I thought, man, this FaZe team, they've only lost 1 map to Miami this tournament. It's not looking good. They're 7-0 online. And this is their chance to break their own win streak. This would put the win streak to 14, right? Breaking their record from Cold War. But Toronto, they bounced back here. And this is what I thought was so impressive. They played FaZe in this match in front of the home crowd. Scraposaurus got absolutely wild. He came up to join us on the watch party as well earlier in the day. Envoy made big plays here. This was the talking point for me. Envoy, Insight, these 2 guys, they've had their struggles, inconsistency, shall we say. Against FaZe, they needed Envoy and Insight to play well, and they absolutely had their moments. This was a wild moment to me. We've seen some body shooting from FaZe. Those guys have been in the mindset of, yep, there's no way that we're going to shoot bodies, and, the karma doesn't exist. The superstition is worth nothing. Here's Scrappy spinning on a Beezy, shooting his body down 2-1 in the series. They win the Karachi hardpoint, they take it to a game 5, and then this happens. Even just the fact that Toronto are in game 5, I was like, wow, FaZe all of a sudden, here we go again, right? Championship Sunday for FaZe, when the pressure's on, they don't even make the grand finals this time, and it is a big storyline, right? These guys looked absolutely unkillable not long ago. They turn up to Sunday, and look, I think it was more other teams raising their game today than it was FaZe falling off, but it's certainly a talking point. And Draz, having killed Scrappy through the wall here on this Rio Search and Destroy, kills him, and obviously they hadn't lost this yet this season. Rio Search was undefeated for FaZe, 4-0 going into this game. Scrappy goes down, Draz shoots his body. Then it goes to a round 11, and in that round 11, a 2 versus 3 retake, Scrappy kills Draza in a crucial moment and wins out the game. They take it to a round 11, Toronto win the round 11. They send Draza and co down to the losers bracket after Draza, was beating Scrappy a lot of times lately. Scrappy brought the energy, and man, this guy is so much fun. Look at him here as well. Like, after this game, he was clearly talking all sorts of trash in the game chat, which I thought was absolutely unbelievable, especially when at this point you probably still got to think you're playing FaZe in the finals, which of course was not what ended up happening. They didn't even play FaZe in the finals, of course, and we'll get into that one in a second. And even Scrappy was standing up on the stage. I think it was on Draza's setup, wasn't it? Didn't he stand up on Draza's setup? Maybe it was on his own setup, I don't know. But he was standing up there, taking the applause of the crowd. No doubt one of the most insane series that Scrappy or anyone else has played. Waiting in the finals, he said. And Draza's like, yeah, GG's Optic. Toronto placed top 3. Trolled loads of search and destroy situations. And that was the key point. Their search was looking suspect. Certainly this tournament, of course, the loss to Miami definitely exemplified that to some degree. And that's it for FaZe. I'm sure there's lots to say on them over the coming days. But Toronto move on to the finals and FaZe drop down to losers. Kind of spoiled the next shot, to be fair, showing that tweet from Draza, but we'll get into it anyway. FaZe go down to Ultra. Crazy series, because Scrappy had a 1.2 to everyone else were negative, and it's just, the Scrappy masterclass has happened again right here. Simp had an uncharacteristically series where he went negative, and actually it was very interesting to see what happens in this series as well against Optic, but this is Optic versus FaZe. The talking point that everyone have had going into this game. Beating FaZe. Could Optic do it? Was it possible? They were 0-6 against this team so far this season. And honestly, on the way they looked Saturday, they didn't really look like a championship contender. But the way they came through today, Optic, playing subliners in losers rounds, whatever it was, 3-4, playing FaZe in losers finals, and then playing Toronto in the grand finals, unbelievable losers bracket run today. We've talked about this Optic team for so long, right? How these guys have had so much potential. I talked about it, and I've said this multiple times. This is the best Optic team formed since the Dynasty. No doubt in my mind in that observation. I've said it multiple times, and I said it even during their runs at previous majors, when they didn't quite get over the line. It's always been about fulfilling that potential. We know it's been there in Optic. There's been loads of talk, Optic scrap, all this stuff, Optic Hydra, all this stuff. And Optic this weekend needed to come out and deliver the goods. That's exactly what they did. They played FaZe map 1, 6-star hardpoint. They get the victory. They did the same thing online, but the question was, just as when they played FaZe online, and they had a very interesting time of winning that series, well, they didn't win it, obviously, right? They probably should have won it, but they bottled many situations. This time they win the high-rise search. And I was standing up here, right, just looking at the crowds, because, this was an unbelievable time just to see this in person. Optic finally win a high-rise search and destroy against FaZe in a situation like this. But all of a sudden, it's not over yet, baby. And it's never over yet with FaZe. Even if FaZe are having a bad day, and I don't even think they played bad today, really. I just think the other teams that they played better, to be honest. And there's certainly a lot to say on that. But FaZe will never go down easy. Like, you're never 3-0ing FaZe. It just doesn't happen. And they end up losing the control. Again, questionable plays from Optic in the control. They get to the A point, they just chow. I don't really know what they're doing, to be fair. They did the same thing against Toronto in the finals, but obviously it didn't matter. And yeah, FaZe take the W. But in the game 5 that we watched on the watch party with Asim, this was unbelievable scenes. And Dashi 1 versus 3 gets the first. 1 versus 2, Draza versus Selim. Bond needs to go down. At this point, actually, I mentioned it on the show. Selim wasn't really doing much, right? He wasn't really on form, didn't really seem like he was frying this day, and I thought, you know what, it's time for Selim to have a takeover moment. Guess what he does? Flies around the corner, gets pissed on by Dashi. Dashi then gets the plant down, 1v1 against Draza. And okay, sure, maybe he pops a couple of snakes here, but I think it was probably all within the regulations and the rules. And guess what? The crowd's going nuts as the victory comes through. Dashi 1 versus 3 clutch. Absolute masterclass. Formal's on the comms as well saying, oh my god, are we serious right now? Dashi just did that for the game. One more round end for Optic. Pred clutches a 1 versus 1. Lots of talk, of course, recently about Pred's 1 versus 1 rate that, especially against FaZe, wasn't looking so good when they played online. All of a sudden, they go to LAN. it seemed to me, FaZe lost that one round 11 to Toronto. And Optic, as a result, go into that series hella confident they can beat FaZe. And the confidence is everything for this Optic team. We've seen it before. And, you know, firstly 1v20, now we 1 versus 3. What a play. And Optic knocked them out of the tournament, right? Like, I'm sure Optic were questioning themselves, the LAN, the crowd, and all this stuff. Were they going to beat FaZe this season? There was a question, would FaZe ever lose to Optic this year? It was raised many a time. But no, Optic beat FaZe for the first time in over a year, which is wild to think about because of how much they dominated this matchup in recent times. But yeah, we've talked about it. Dashy versus Cellium as a battle. That matchup was dominated by Dashy for a long time, and it was the same again today. So Simp frustrated with the loss, of course. They're going to need to come back stronger again. The 7-0 curse bites, right? 7-0 in the qualifiers, lose at the major. Here's Dashy, by the way, waving goodbye to Drazah on the other side of the stage of the FaZe boys. So, you know, they were brimming with confidence at this point. FaZe aren't even in the finals. Can you believe it? This was, by the way, the final numbers of the series here. So it's Dashy, it's Shotzzy. Shotzzy was the superstar of the series for me. That game 1-6, he was making unbelievable plays. And even when the invasion got somewhat competitive, sure, Shotzzy got caught a couple of times. It's going to happen. But then Dashy turned up and Optic get to their 4th grand finals in the last 7 tournaments for the first time since all the way back in 2017 when the dynasty was still in action. So the game gets underway. And this was absolutely emphatic. Like, Toronto Ultra, they'd just taken down FaZe. Scrappy in front of the home crowd, it's got to be said. We saw what happened at the World Championship last year when he was obviously 5-0 to the grand finals there. Optic come in, they play sub-base game 1, they slam him. And I feel like if you're Toronto, the sub-base map 1, I know that they're good at this map, but Optic love this stuff, right? And the fact that they played the map 1 gave them all sorts of confidence. Obviously, the series concludes in very short order after that. And yes, this was a best of 7 grand finals, but Ultra really did not put up much of a fight in this series. And it was a swift 6-3. Optic were just playing absolutely lights out Call of Duty. The level that we've expected from Optic, right? Like we knew they were going to be a contender this tournament. But after their performances, you know, Thursday, Saturday especially, I didn't think they would make it past top 3, to be honest. But they came to play today. And even though they made some questionable plays in that control, they still get the victory in the end, 3-1 on the invasion, and job done in the Rio Hardpoint. Dashy had 10 in a row right there. Even Drazah as well, okay, CEO of Optic, potentially no more after losing to them today. He was laughing about the fact that Scrappy was getting smashed, right? That's basically it. That's, you know, and man, there's just so much to say today. It couldn't be any better in many ways, really, the way this resulted. Scrappy was shooting bodies, down 0-3 here, but Optic on this Rio Hardpoint, we're just going to slam another team, and that's exactly what happens. Just playing with lights out confidence this series. And again, we talked about the potential liabilities for Ultra, the Envoy, especially the Insight thing. And this series, you know, he got tucked into bed. These were the overall numbers for an absolute bloodbath 4-0 grand finals. Like, we've been waiting for this, you know what I mean? We've been waiting for this from Optic to show this level of dominance. Toronto won Major 1, FaZe won Major 2, Optic win Major 3. What a season we have on our hands so far, and what a season we are going to continue to have from now to the end of the season, because I genuinely came into this weekend thinking, man, this could almost be boring if FaZe run away and dominate, but Call of Duty on LAN in this type of crowd, in this type of environment, this type of venue, these type of storylines, it's never boring. And here's Shotzzy, MVP of the weekends. So what a moment for Call of Duty, what a moment for the fans. Optic Texas back on top for the first time in over 2 years since Major 1 2022. How long is their trophy drought going to last for now? They've broken their longest ever trophy drought with 13 tournaments. Who knows if they can go back to back or even go one further than that and win the World Championship? Because if they play what they did today, anything is possible for this team. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
It's the moment that ends the drought. Such a long time since Optic has won in a CDL, but a performance like that, absolutely flawless. It was a tough nut to crack. Your champions, Optic Texas.